My name's Pat Dalzell. I'm with Bruce Power. And I work in corporate affairs, market development. Before that, I had a background in derivatives trading with a little hedge fund company. So in short, I'm grossly unqualified to be moderating this panel. But like many Canadians, the first time I really heard of isotopes at all was in 2008, back when isotopes became headline news on the CBC. And it was because of the outage at Chalk River, and all of a sudden the world's supply of moly, which was used for imaging, and all kinds of people have had this experience of using technetium to do imaging of circulatory systems and other things that you all probably know much more than I do about it. But all of a sudden the world's supply of this essential tool in diagnostics was at risk, and I thought, well, that's strange. Why would it be that Canada is the source of this isotope that so many people use all around the world? And the story evolved. Eventually, there was governments looking into what they could do to help make sure that this didn't happen again, shoring up the supply of moly, and looking at alternative means of producing it rather than just a research reactor in a small part of Ontario. And one of the conclusions, by the way, of some of that government study was that commercial power reactors would never be involved in this space, right? It just didn't make sense from them from an economics perspective. And in a lot of ways, you look back at that incident, you look at sort of the findings of the study, you find new ways of producing moly, and you fast forward to the closure, the long-term closure of that research reactor, and you would think that maybe Canada would be completely out of this game, out of this space, out of this industry. But that's not the case, right? That's why we're all here today. In a lot of ways, while this industry and Canada's leadership in this space has been challenged, and we were at risk of losing it, the reason we're all here today is to make sure that that does not happen, right? We're at an inflection point. Canada has a leadership role in this space, and it's important that we leverage our capability, our infrastructure, our know-how, our research, to make sure that we maintain that leadership role and that we punch above our weight. And that's really what the nature of our conversation today is going to be about. And that's why these people who know much more about isotopes than Pat Dalzell does are going to be able to address you and talk a little bit about that role that Canada can play going forward. So I don't think we haven't actually gone through the introduction of the whole panel, but right next to me here is Chief Ritchie, followed by MP Picazzetto. Then we've got Brad Wooters from UHN, MP Jenna Suds, and Catherine Hirashi from Triumph Innovation. Hayashi, sorry, I think I mispronounced that. And with that, let's just get into the topic that we want to talk about, which is really Canada's role in isotopes and why it's important. MP Suds, maybe I'll direct this one to you. Why is it important for us to have a Team Canada approach to isotopes at this time?
Okay, can you hear me? Testing. Try this again. There we go. Excellent. Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me here today. Pat, I might rival you in my knowledge of isotopes. We'll see. However, have always tried to champion the important work that some of the companies in my riding do, some of which I know are here, Nordion, MBW, XT. And having said that, when I think about the need for a Team Canada approach, I think really about two critical elements. And I think it's because of the point of time that we are in. And one of them is really just about our sovereignty, frankly, as a country, our national sovereignty, and just ensuring that we have the supply that we need here in Canada and continue on the world stage as well. Secondly, I just think about public health outcomes, right? Ensuring that we have a stable supply of isotopes here in Canada is tied of course, to the well-being of all of our citizens across the country. So we know we've been a world leader in this space for many, many years, and so ensuring that that continues to be true. When it comes to a Team Canada approach, it takes everyone. It takes industry, it takes researchers, it takes all levels of government coming together to ensure that we put our best foot forward, but also that we protect those two things I just mentioned, really, which is our national security and sovereignty and health outcomes for Canadians. As a federal government, I'm proud of some of the work that we have been able to do over the last, I'll say, particularly decade. And I will mention one of my dear past colleagues, Pam Damoff, who was a member of Parliament for almost a decade and who led our nuclear caucus within our government. And I think it's a testament to some of the work that she has done over the years that pushed our government to do more. So I think about investments, of course, in Triumph, SIF funding, as well, of course, building out the ecosystem, but then also, investments through, whether it's NRCan, other government departments that we have supported the work that they're doing through our funding, and partnerships with health and with industry. So whether that's Health Canada, the Canadian Institute for Health Research, Triumph Innovations, there's a lot happening throughout this country that I think we can be proud of and that our government has stepped up to support. I think lastly, I would look to some of the strategic policy and coordination role that we've played as a federal government. So I think about things like the Pan-Canada health data strategy, the biomanufacturing and life sciences strategy, really critical pieces of work to move forward as a government. And then, of course, just ensuring that on the international stage, we are representing and advocating for the industry as well. I think all of those pieces as a federal government, we push forward, but of course working with provincial government partners, local governments, and as I mentioned, of course, industry and research. I think when we do all of that well, when we can collaborate collectively with that shared vision, that's our biggest opportunity and our biggest strength moving forward.
Yeah, agreed, and well said. And you mentioned research, and Brad, maybe I'll turn to you. I get the impression anyway that theranostics is one area that we're leading in as Canadians. Could you speak maybe a little bit to that, the importance of it, and other areas that you think that we are leading in currently as a Canadian industry?
Yeah, well, I think there are many examples of that, and the story you opened with, I think, is a really important one. When that announcement around the shortage of technetium was announced, no one in Canada really knew that Canada was a leader in that area.
Right.
And even the response to it didn't sort of acknowledge the need for Canada to be a leader. And I think, you heard the comments just now, I think really resonate with me and with many others as well, is that it's an extremely important time, not only for this industry and the opportunity that this meeting is about in radiopharmaceuticals and isotopes, for sure it is, but for Canada in general. And when you talk about the opportunity or the need for a Team Canada, I think what's really needed is an opportunity to think about how Canada can lead in specific areas and industries, how that contributes to our sovereignty, how that contributes to our independence, and with the changes that are happening around the world right now, there's an incredible opportunity for us to think about where we can build a stronger, research-driven, knowledge-based future economy. And there are incredible opportunities to do that. Canada has some extraordinary leading research organizations all across the country, universities and research hospitals that are ranked within the top global hospitals and institutions anywhere in the world. So there's an incredible base for investment and support in those areas. And this is a great opportunity in radioisotopes because it is an area where we've had leadership in the development of radiopharmaceuticals, in the application, in the production of isotopes. The components are all there. The part that's missing, I think, is the ambition. And the ambition for us, Canada, to be a global leader. That's the decision, and that's the commitment, I think, that's needed. That's the part that's missing. And we've seen some great initiatives at both the provincial level and in the investment in life sciences, the federal level, and the need for biomanufacturing. And there are components that are there. And it's a time, I think, to rally and really create that bigger and more bold ambition.
Yeah, thanks. I totally agree. And speaking of ambition, MPP Cazzetto, you're also the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Energy. Yesterday, the integrated energy plan was launched, and you want to talk about an ambitious plan to tackle energy challenges going forward. There was also a good element of isotope content in that integrated energy plan, which I was delighted to see. And having just announced close to $16 million in support for McMaster, and looking at how significantly the province seemed to be backing the importance of isotopes. Maybe you could speak a little bit to how this kind of fits into the Protecting Ontario strategy and the overall portfolio of energy.
Thank you, Pat. And being someone that came from a family that my father died of lung cancer, my father-in-law had prostate cancer, and myself, I have a mechanical heart valve, but still, it's all to do with health. And, I'm lucky to be here today because if I did not catch that, I would not be here today. So on that point, what we're doing here in Ontario, we're building out our energy grid. But not only are we building out our energy grid, we are building nuclear. And nuclear is where we produce isotopes. So that's what a lot of people have to think about what we're doing here in Ontario. And we're going to be a leader in production of nuclear energy in the world. We are selling our technology around the world. And people right now are watching Ontario. That's my new line that I use. The world is watching Ontario. And it's true, they are. Everywhere you go around the world, they talk about Ontario's nuclear industry. But not only to power Ontario, it's about isotopes. Think about it. If we had closed down Pickering 8 years ago, we would have lost approximately 25% of the isotopes being used around the world. Can you imagine that? These are all cancer-fighting treatments. As well, we are investing $15.5 million over 3 years at McMaster University. So from a 5-day production of isotope, it's going to go to a 24-hour, 7 days a week production of isotope. But I look at Bruce Power here, thank you. I want to thank them for everything they do, because without them, we wouldn't be in the situation we are today. We're a world leader. So thank you for you guys for everything you do at Bruce Power. As well, that we each year we treat about 70,000 cancer patients a year here in Ontario. And I always go back to isotopes. Without them, we wouldn't be able to treat this. And this is all because of the investment we are making in healthcare as well. I'm not sure if you're aware, when we took office in 2018, healthcare was funded at $59.4 billion. You know what healthcare is funded at today? Does anybody know? $91 billion in Ontario, right? That's an increase of $31 billion. And that's not including the $61 billion on top to build hospitals, right? And the $10 billion to build long-term care in the province of Ontario. And on June 25th, we're going to break ground at my hospital in Mississauga, Lakeshore, right? It will be the largest hospital in Canadian history being built there. And the nice thing for me is I was born at the original hospital, and now it's full circle for me. I'm going to be launching the largest hospital in Canadian history. And together, with all the people in this room, all the healthcare workers, we're going to build a better Ontario together and fight all these diseases out there together. And we're going to be world leaders. So I want to thank you all for being here today And like I said, the team, like we were talking earlier on, the Team Canada approach, we have to be united right now because of what is going on down south. And together, we will win this battle. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and absolutely agree. We will win this battle. And it's gatherings like this and discussions like these that help lead the way to making sure that happens. You know, the first time I ever got to speak publicly about the opportunity that Bruce Power had with isotopes was presenting to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation an idea about potentially developing this, retrofitting reactors that produce these short-lived isotopes, and how it would be a great opportunity for us to work with SON in terms of developing economic opportunities and working together to fight cancer. And it was such a neat experience. We then got to travel to Ottawa, lobbying the federal government, trying to get them to help shore up this partnership and make it a reality. Fast forward all these years later, here I am on stage with Chief Ritchie, and now I really just want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about how you view the partnership that we have, how it can be potentially a model to look at how we can expand other isotope development opportunities and work collaboratively with First Nations in the development of this amazing technology.
Well, I just say good morning to everybody that's here, and thank you for the invite to share a little bit of perspective from Saugeen. But first, before I go right into it, I just wanted to recognize and acknowledge that we do have another community that's part of our nation. That's Chippewas of Nayashingamig. Chief Najwan was present here this morning, but I believe he did step out for a bit. But we do have also one of the chair persons, co-chairs that sit on the Gamzokamin Akazawin partnership, and that's Theron Solomon. I don't know if you want to stand up there, Theron, so everybody can see you. Put him on the spot there a little bit. So Theron's one of our counselors that co-chair on that, and one of the portfolio holders. And I think with the partnership with Bruce Power, I think that's a model that we can follow in industry as well, in government, a template or a blueprint to follow, because in that partnership, SON, which is Saugeen and Nayashingaming, aren't just stakeholders, but partnership. It's more partnership, and it has our values that are reflective in some of the decision making in that partnership. And I think one of the goals for SON as well is to ensure that like the isotopes is accessible for all people, and not just for those that those that are privileged that can afford it. And I think that's one of the goals, to make it more accessible for everybody, and also just the inclusion of the Indigenous peoples within that treaty territory. Bruce Power was referenced, and I believe 35% of the energy comes from our territory. So just following that blueprint that we're working on to include the Indigenous peoples, and making partnerships such as this one, the Gamzokamin Akazawin, following that, and just making sure that we all are aware of treaties and everything that the rights holders have within that. And once we include the Indigenous peoples in some of that process, we make things a bit more honorable and holistic. And there's a perspective that the industry, or even within the healthcare field, that Indigenous peoples can bring to the table to help things be more holistic, not just for Indigenous peoples, but for all people. And I think we have to start collaborating a bit more togetherness, because we're living in a time and era now where separation and isolation isn't a path forward, but a path forward that's inclusive and togetherness. And I think our young people have to be able to see and witness that. And we have some leaders, and I see that we had doctors that were here earlier presenting, and just making sure that those voices are reflective, because for a long time, Indigenous peoples have been left out of the picture, and I think it's time that we switch that narrative and create a better path forward. And if we can't move forward without Indigenous voices at the table. And so that's about it. Yep.
No, thanks for that. Totally agree. This involves everybody coming to the table, every perspective, and making sure that we're all driving the same way and getting the positive results we're all after. And speaking of that, Catherine, during our lead up to this a couple of weeks ago when we had our call, you referenced the term "owning the podium." Just wondering if you might speak a little bit to the opportunities to attract more capital into the full spectrum of the isotope supply chain, right? The commercialization aspect on top of the R&D, and just build on that opportunity to own the podium, as you put it.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting hearing all the Team Canada references. I guess with the Stanley Cup Finals on, it's all kind of at least in the corner of our mind. And I think the Own the Podium came from when Canada hosted the Olympics, and the idea behind Own the Podium was we have to leverage our strengths, right? We can't be excellent at everything, and we can't afford to try to be excellent at everything. So we have to try to leverage our best chances for success. And nuclear is a place that Canada legitimately has a very strong position in the world. So how do we put more focus and more resources to advance ourselves and maintain and grow that leadership position? And that's the opportunity we have, and I think we all have to work together on it. One of the things that we talked about is really, in order for us to succeed, we have to have a strong ecosystem. And so as part of the Medical Isotope Ecosystem Project, I spent a lot of time thinking about ecosystems and what makes a strong ecosystem. And I think what's clear is that the whole ecosystem has to be healthy. So you can't just have strong research and development, because Canada does have great research. But if we don't have the capital to advance that research and the capital to grow and scale those companies in Canada, Canada will not benefit, right? There has to be skills development, there has to be supply chain, like all of the pieces of the ecosystem have to be healthy. And one of the pieces that's always identified as a weak spot for Canada is the lack of capital, particularly risk capital. And so I'm hoping that, and we really are living in unprecedented times. You know, we're talking about Team Canada, we're talking about Elbows Up, we're talking about really changing the way we see ourselves in the world. And so maybe this is an opportunity for us to try to do different things, to look at things in a different way. And it's well known that risk capital in Canada is proportionately small compared to the US. So even if you adjust for our population base, there's just less risk capital in Canada. So why is that? And we have a system where there is actually a lot of capital in Canada, but less of it is able to take risks or culturally accustomed to taking risks. So I think one of the opportunities that we have is for us to look at pension funds and changing the rules and regulations around pension funds to enable some of that money to go into supporting more innovative ventures. There's also a lot of institutional investor money in Canada that, again, if we built the right incentives to mitigate risk for those, to put in tax incentives, there's a huge opportunity for us to kind of make some progress in building a strong ecosystem that's going to enable the excellent Canadian research and the supply chain that we have to progress more quickly through research and development, through commercialization, through scale up. I mean, that's the opportunity that we have, and it involves sort of all of us working together. But I feel like we're in our elbows up era. So I think we're maybe willing to take a little bit more risk in order to succeed, and that's what it takes to own the podium. You have to go for it, and I think maybe we're getting ready to go for it, and I hope we're all part of that solution.
There seems to be a general sentiment to that effect, right? People seem to be ready and willing to take that kind of risk and invest in these kinds of opportunities, so I totally agree. Maybe I'll just switch the question over to a bit of a public policy perspective, and I'll throw this one at MP Suds and MP Picazzetto, and maybe I'll then kind of let Chief Ritchie respond. What do you think, from a public policy perspective, we can do to help enable all of this to come together and maintain a leadership in the fight against cancer? And that includes Indigenous communities, as you heard the Chief speak before.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So, I think it's fair to say that good public policy is the thread that will weave the industry and the success, frankly, of the sector together. I think of things like the need for a national isotope strategy as one piece of policy that we can move forward, and there's been efforts made to date to move that forward. More needs to be done. But I think that's one example that we can point to that could have lasting generational impact. I think we need, as we said, we've all said here on this panel, in this moment, the collaboration. So the collaboration when it comes to policy, of course, then looking to industry insights and guidance, looking to collaboration with provinces, with Indigenous people to ensure that we're putting, frankly, just our best foot forward. We can't do that on our own. We are not experts in all domains, but the opportunity exists, I think, in this moment for us to come together and to ensure good public policy is woven through the sector.
Right now, it is the opportunity for Canada to advance in every field, but especially with First Nations. For many years, we did not work with them like we should have been, making them partners. Because when we're partners, we will achieve much more in the province of Ontario and through Canada. As we got to continue to do our duty to consult with the Indigenous community, and I think that's the most important part. But to attract investment, problem with governments, every stripe of government, I'm gonna insult our government and other governments, and is that we always look at a 4-year plan because we might not be around after that. But if you listen to what Minister Lecce did yesterday for our energy sector, it's a 25-year plan. And by doing that, it attracts investment. Otherwise, you don't get the large investments into your country or into your province. And that's the only way we can do it. All governments should look at 25-year plans or even further. Because if you want to attract the capital that we're going to need to expand, that's the only way you can do it. So together, we should all levels of government should do that. Otherwise, we won't get what we need to make Canada a leader. Because we can be a leader in everything. I know you said not everything, but I think we can. We have everything here. If you think about what we have, I joke around that we shouldn't even be paying taxes in Canada, especially in Ontario. Sorry, I'm going to say Ontario here, because of everything that we have. We have natural resources. We have, like, from oil to cobalt to lithium to nickel to every natural resource that we need, and without doing environmental damage or using child labor. And I know we're getting off the isotope thing. How many people in this room drive an electric car? Do you know that each electric car has 13 kilos of cobalt in it? And 75% of that cobalt comes from where? Congo, right? And what do they do in the Congo? Child labor, no environmental standards, right? So what does Ontario have? Chief, we have a lot of cobalt here, correct? So why shouldn't we be using our own materials here in Ontario to produce the batteries of the future here? So that's how I look at. And Pam Damoff. I know Pam doesn't know me, I don't think, but I know Pam from 2015 campaign. Okay, in your riding of Oakville, North Burlington, and sorry, now I lost my train of thought here on the cobalt here. But we should just continue developing Ontario and be leaders. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And Chief?
Well, I think there has to be a guarantee for opportunities for Indigenous co-ownership and federally funded in science projects. I also think that partnerships that include the Indigenous voices from the treaty territories. I know the MP spoke earlier about some of the resources and things that exist within Ontario, but also recognizing that there is rights holders within those treaty territories, and finding a collaborative way to, find a path forward, or creating a blueprint for others to follow. And I think also that having that worldview that the Indigenous people bring to the table is a big piece that really needs to be echoed for people, for life in general, because there's an understanding that the Indigenous people have, where they've held on to a type of wisdom or a type of knowledge that's been passed on through generations. And I think for the most part, when you look around the room, most people were an Indigenous people at one time. Most people, or all people, had a connection to the land, to the water, to everything around us. And for whatever reason, we've been molded into a particular way to live in a certain lifestyle. But how can we accommodate that lifestyle and things that we have today? How can we make it safer for future generations? Because there's one thing to extract resources and all the things, but there is a cause and effect to everything that we do. And how can we look at those ways, and how can we include the Indigenous voices as part of those tables when it comes to even making policy or any type of laws or environmental assessments? Because what we do to the earth is one thing, but how can we do it in a way that preserves certain resources for future generations? Because it will be our children and our grandchildren that will pay the prices of what we do today. And I think before we even get into a global approach, we have to make sure that within Canada we have our strategy in order that includes Indigenous voices, the rights holders, because there was a treaties that were made with the Crown. And I believe we can do that if we have partners that are willing to work and honor the treaties, but also to have inclusion of our voices at the tables. And when Indigenous voices aren't at the tables, we all suffer as a people. Because once you start to recognize the treaties and those rights and everything that the rights holders have, then you start to honor and recognize yourselves, because there's an understanding that we have when in our relationship with the land, with the water, with all the resources and minerals that we have. And so when we speak about those things, that's where we're coming from in that lens. And when partners and when Crown Canada, Ontario, or those partners start to recognize that, it's not to stop everything, but to do a little bit of our due diligence to make sure that there's resources and things left for future generations to come, because we can't move too quickly, but we can find innovative ways if we sit down and talk with each other to create those partnerships like the one that we have with Bruce Power and the model that we created with that, because we're in that we're partners and not stakeholders. So I think just making sure that there is a voice, there is a people that have always been here. And they've been here since the beginning, and we're going to be here a long time. So we have to build those relationships with each other. So miigwech.
Real partnership creates an opportunity to listen and learn from each other. Brad, you've had an opportunity to hear a little bit from policymakers, leaders. What would be your perspective, because you've got an attentive audience right now, what would be your recommendations for policy decisions that could actually improve and move forward in an easier way some of what we're trying to do here in terms of leadership and creating an environment that fosters more isotope production and brings home that whole value chain?
Well, I think probably the most important thing for us to do is to develop a common vision for what we want to achieve together. And we saw during COVID, for example, where we all had a very clear idea of what we wanted to do. Everyone was pulling in the same direction. And we saw a lot of what we thought were roadblocks or barriers fall down. And in my area, we could activate research clinical trials very quickly. We worked with regulators at the federal government, at the provincial government. We moved quickly. We saw how evidence that was generated by research was influencing policy in a real-time way and making changes to the delivery of public health and vaccination and so on. So it was an incredible time to sort of think about what we can achieve when we have a real common objective and we have arrows pointed in the same way. And I think that's sort of what we need. We hear some great examples. If Canada wants to take a leadership role in this space, if it wants to be a leading country for the development of what we all kind of recognize as a really promising, exciting new therapy with potential, huge potential for gains in health, but also opportunities for economic development. If that is the objective, then we should have that strategy. And it means thinking about investments and research and what's needed. It thinks about coordination. Glenn talked about the need for a Canada-wide clinical trial consortium that can be more competitive than any other clinical group in the world to launch those trials. It means thinking about how to attract investment and create the environment for risk capital, for the creation of new companies. And it means attracting, the groups that are already active here. This has already moved into industry. There are big players. Some of them are here in this room. And there's an opportunity to think about how to strengthen those relationships, bring them into the country, make sure the investments that they're going to make will happen here. And for us to think about how to be great partners to enable and to move forward, from a research perspective, what's needed to generate evidence. And then, as you heard from the hospitals, to be ready for that market and to ensure that our patients are receiving those therapies first, that we have those ingrained into our long-term plans, the need for coordination around reimbursement, for regulatory approvals. There's a big part of that entire chain. But it starts with a shared vision that this is what we want to achieve here.
Thanks. That makes a ton of sense. Couldn't agree more. I know we're running a little short on time, but Catherine, we are going to require funding in this sector, right, going forward, and we're going to have to make sure that that the right mechanisms are created, but we don't want them to compromise commercial integrity and opportunities either. What are your thoughts on how that potential funding stream could be structured going forward?
I think that Brad raised a really great point about, so if we set ourselves a mission where we're going to lead the world in this sector, I think that that's a wonderful way to kind of look at it. So historically, how we fund early stage technology is really a supply side, right? Where we set up programs like CIHR, CFI, we collect a bunch of scientific ideas. We hope that the best ones will bubble up and continue to receive funding. And it does work, but it takes a long time. And so if we could, for strategic areas, provide a more mission-driven mechanism where we know we want to create the next generation of radiotheranostics companies. We know we want to create the next generation of medical isotope production excellence. So if those are the goals, then we set up programming to do it faster and more cost effectively. There are programs in the US like ARPA-E, like SBIR, where people don't have to spend the extra time required to get the matching together. All of this stuff eats up months and years. And when you're competing in a global arena to try and develop technology that's better, faster, cheaper than everyone else in the world, you have to use those mechanisms. So I think that there's an opportunity to start to at least pilot for our areas where we want to own the podium, a more mission-driven approach to how we identify and fund and advance and incubate those technologies, and how do we work together with all the levels of government, with industry partners, with our academic partners, our clinicians. You know, how do we all pull together to realize that vision, that collective vision? And I think the opportunity is in front of us in a way that it never has been before.
Well said, Catherine. And I think us all coming together at events like this is a part of that, right? And thanks to Melody and the CNIC for putting this together. I, as I said, don't know anything about isotopes, so I am not going to be the one to close this off. But I do want to leave each of our panelists a quick elevator pitch style answer as to why it's important for us to remain leaders in this space. What does it mean to be leaders in radioisotopes as Canadians? Chief, can we start with you?
Yeah, I think just promoting the use of isotopes and the usage, and then, you know, maybe at some point having that funded for, you know, all people to have access to the isotopes instead of a privileged few that may, you know, are able to afford it. And I think pushing for that in the field that it will create opportunities, because all people aren't immune to cancer. I think that's one thing that we all share is that, you know, it doesn't matter what color or what religion or what you believe in, where you come from. I think all people are affected by cancer in one way or another. And I think, you know, supporting and promoting that, maybe that will create change in the sense of making that accessible for everybody. So also, I just wanted to acknowledge Chief Najwan. He is in the room now, so any of the hard questions you can put to him and put him on the spot, but he's there now, so I just wanted to recognize him that he's there, and so yeah, thank you.
Well, as being the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Energy and Mines, this is a perfect opportunity for Ontario and for Canada to be leaders in the fight of cancer. Like I said, my father had cancer, my father-in-law had cancer. Probably 40% of the population will get cancer. So let us be leaders in this field and not depend on jurisdictions in the world that do not follow environmental standards as we're developing our industry to promote, to build isotopes. And let's continue supporting the world with isotopes together. That's all I want to leave you with.
I'll just be very short. I think we have an incredible opportunity before us where, and is an example of how investment in research and innovation in an environment like Canada can drive improvements not only in health and what cancer patients need, and the excitement about new opportunities and new therapies to improve their lives and the lives of their communities, but at the same time drive economic benefit and prosperity for Canadians. So there are other examples of this. This is one that is there for the taking. It's built on a large part of historical strengths that Canada already has. And I think if we don't do this, there will be case studies around the world as why Canada missed it.
Thank you. Lots of consensus. I think you're hearing up here on stage. My colleagues have all made some really great points. I think I go back to where I started in saying that to me, this is about the health of our country. It is about the opportunity we have here in this room and further abroad to ensure a healthy future for ourselves, for future generations. It's seizing the moment to ensure that we achieve that. Going back to my earlier comment as well about our sovereignty, right? We have a critical mission in front of us at this point in time, whether we elbows up, you name it. There's lots of slogans and whatnot out there at this moment, but we can choose our destiny. And where we put our energy really matters right now. Our personal energy really matters right now. And if we want to create a brighter future, a healthier future for Canadians, for future generations, we can. We need to unite. We need to ensure that critical mission where we all align, and we have the ability to do that. We also have to recognize that this is a huge economic opportunity as a country. Great jobs, well-paying jobs, lots of opportunities for innovation, and that too will create a brighter future for Canadians. So again, it's a critical moment, and I think with the brain power not only in this room, but back in the places where you all work, and by collaborating with other levels of government, other partners, we can and we will, if we unite, have a brighter future for Canadians.
So I'm going to continue with the hockey analogies. I think this is a TSN turning point for Canada. And, we can take the leverage, we can leverage the strengths that we have historically in terms of infrastructure and expertise. We can couple that with what we learned about how to respond to a crisis during COVID. And we can take all of that and couple it with the drive and ambition to take advantage of an opportunity that lays before us, right? So we can take all of that and this common mission, which I can feel in the room. So how do we continue to drive forward toward this common goal and vision? So I think this is a great step today, and I think we'll all be following up with each other on how we move it forward. But it is something that really can unite us with a common vision, with reconciliation, with partnerships. So I look forward to the future with all of you.
Well, thank you all very much. A TSN turning point, lots of opportunity, and we don't want to be a case study in failure. So that was a great way to summarize the past 2 days. Again, thanks again to the CNIC, and a big round of applause to our panelists today. That was fun.